I'm going to talk about thriving over surviving. I was asked to give a talk on this topic at an organisation recently, and so I haven't given this talk in public before. I was asked to talk about the topic of thriving over surviving in a changing world, and I was asked for my own personal tips and tricks. So in this talk, I'm going to share both some kind of organisational learnings the hard way, where I've made mistakes or others have made mistakes. So I'm going to share some of the organisational learnings around thriving over surviving at work, and I'm going to share some personal learnings as well, like individual learnings about thriving over surviving. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I have what's on the timer plus another 2 minutes because I started early. And if Owen chases me around the room, so be it. So, to quote Deming, a bad system will beat a good person every time. I've seen that, I'm sure you've seen that. I see some nods in the room. A bad system will beat a good person every time. I have a corollary to that, which is that a bad culture will beat a bad system every time. So if you have a toxic culture, if you have a culture of fear, if you have a blame culture, that will beat a good system because you won't have a good system. A bad culture doesn't create a good system. So I actually think that this topic, in order of precedence, it's no surprise, it's culture first, and then it's system, and then it's individual. And in order to thrive over survive in a large organisation, these are the three things I'm going to take a look at. First of all, culture, and what can you do about your behavioural norms in an organisation. Secondly, the system of work. Thirdly, you as an individual. And the first two, this is you as a leader. So, and it doesn't matter how senior or junior you are, this is leaders at all levels in all roles. Everybody can be a leader. For example, Greta Thunberg, who's just been arrested yesterday, I think, in London. She was at school and she's an amazing leader. She's leading a movement. So this is you as a leader, and there are things you can do as a leader. And then the individual is you as an individual. So this is what you can do as an individual. So first of all, on culture. As we know, you can't create culture, you can nurture culture. This is gardening. To quote from General Stanley McChrystal, team of teams, as a gardener, you can garden culture. You can nurture the culture that you want to see. And so I was inside the company. We were doing an event, and I was in a lunch break, and I was talking to this lady at a lunch break, and she said, she was talking about her place of work. And she said, oh, you know what? If you saw me at work, you wouldn't even know who I am. You wouldn't recognize me because I'm like evil at work. I'm really hard-nosed. I'm really nasty. This is the nice me. And this is the real me you're seeing now. I'm a really nice person. And she was a really nice person. And she said, all the nice people get fired. I've learned how to be nasty. Like, oh my God, Jesus. And so she puts on this persona, and what she said to me is I've just resigned because I don't want to be that nasty person. That was the only way that she could survive in that company and thrive in that company was by being a nasty person. Did you see what word I was nearly going to use? By being a not nice person. And she didn't use nice language as she was describing it. And so the context here is behavioural norms in an organisation. This particular organisation had developed a behavioural norm of not being nice. And so in order to survive and thrive, you fit in with the culture because it's how you get promoted, it's how you get rewarded, it's even the kind of the subconscious pats on the back that you might get. So she thankfully chose to leave that organisation. But what does that do? That further reinforces the nasty culture. It further reinforces the fact that the nice people leave or they get fired. And so she said that she was seeing people who were nice being fired. So that further reinforces the culture. So the learning here is you have to be super crystal clear. This is my belief, this is my learning. You have to be very crystal clear around what are the desired behaviors you want to have in this organization. And the more senior a leader you are, the bigger your shadow, the more influence you have, the more power you have. So this more senior a leader you are, both the easier it is for you to signpost the desired behaviors, and the more impact you will have if you role model them and if you actually live them yourself. But even if you are not a senior leader, and even if you're not a leader of people, like a line manager, but even if you're a leader as an individual contributor, I believe you can still be very intentional about the types of behaviors that you want for your scope of remit, for whatever your scope of remit is. Within this scope of remit, within this sphere of influence, this sphere of control, these are the behaviors that we want to exhibit. And I know I've got line of sight, I'm talking regularly to more than 50 organizations, and this comes up right early on in the conversation, which is, what are your desired behaviors? And there are so few organizations that actually have them written down, that actually have them signposted. So credit Craig, Schroders Personal Wealth, who spoke a couple of talks ago. Kudos, because you had a slide that had principles, and you had these are the behaviors that these principles translate into, and you had a scoring 1 to 5 on average from both leaders and bottom up as well. So that's an example of good, is to be very explicit about the behaviors that you want. So kudos to Schroders Personal Wealth for that. You need to, my learning is you need to communicate them 3 more times than you think you need to, and you're a third of the way done. Craig, please nod or shake your head if you agree. Yes, you agree. You need to incentivize them. You need to recognize them. You need to give feedback on them. They have to have teeth. They have to be, actually, you have to get a feedback loop on them if you're not living those behaviors, and hire for them as well. So there is another organization where by the lift lobby, there are blue posters with 12 behaviors written on them at this organization, and nobody lives them at this other organization. And I was giving some feedback to the executive committee about behaviors, and I hadn't even seen the blue poster. And I said, there's a lack of clarity around your behavioral norms. Nobody mentioned the poster. And then I come out of the lift, there's a poster in front of me with psychological safety, intent-based leadership, experimentation. It's like, well, why didn't you tell me you've got a poster? I mean, that just really shows how much that organization was not living the words that were on the paper. So it's one thing to have the words written down. It's an entirely another thing to actually live them. So as a leader, your role is to live them, role model them, make sure they're clearly communicated, and they need to have teeth. Otherwise, they're just words on a piece of paper. The next one is, in terms of leadership behaviors to thrive over survive, is you have to role model. Origins of the word lead is to guide on a journey. And that means guiding from the front, not go on, transform, change your behavior, I dare you. I'm going to stay here. That's a true story. One particular leadership team, it was disingenuous. So you have to actually role model it. Leaders go first. Number 2 is psychological safety. I'm sure I don't need to say any more on that. I'm sure you're all well aware on that topic. Number 1, determinant of high-performing teams, the ability to say, I don't know, the ability to ask for help, the ability to safely fail. And then number 3 is an emergent mindset. So what you can do as a leader is to go, and this is a huge mindset shift from a deterministic mindset, where the definition of success is a milestone in a Gantt chart put together at the point of having learned the least, to outcomes, experimentation, hypotheses, collaboration, clear goal, psychological safety. That's an emergent mindset. Basically acknowledging that the future is not knowable and optimizing for the fact that the future is not knowable. That's an emergent mindset. And this topic is people, process, tooling in that order. It's not process, tooling, oops, we forgot about the people, which is the usual case at most organizations. My rule of thumb is this is 80% culture, this is only 20% process and tooling. Most organizations are rolling out some form of Scrum Scaled and Jira. and someone who will remain nameless came up to me, might be in the room, and said, my job at the moment is to force people to adopt this tool. Okay, so it's 80% culture. So the pattern, again, is to be intentional about the behaviors and live them. And when I say live them, I mean role model, and I mean give them teeth. So head of HR needs to be involved, head of people and culture. Great if they're called the head of people and culture rather than the head of human resources. That's a good indicator. So if you've got a head in P&C rather than a head of HR, hopefully they can help with the P&C, as opposed to treating people like humans like resources. I'm just going to pause because I see a camera up. And what we want is we want continuous improvement. We want the cheapest cost of failure. We want an experiment. We want lots of little experiments. Fantastic. Now we know it doesn't work. Most organizations have a very expensive cost of failure. I'm sure you can all picture in your minds the big white elephant initiatives where an organization has been, well, we've put 300 million into this, we're 3 years in and we haven't delivered any value whatsoever, we need to put another 100 million in. And I'll kind of mention that when talking to senior leadership teams and there's knowing looks in the room, as it's like, oh God, yes, yeah, we got a few of them. So instead we want to continuously improve the how. And like the anti-pattern here is we're too busy doing the doing to have a conversation about how we do the doing. So which is a universal human condition from working with or talking to more than 50 organizations. Every single organization, with one or two exceptions, people are too busy doing the doing to take time out to think about improving how they do the doing. I think we've got some confirmation bias in this room. I think we've got people who, everyone here will already know how important it is to continuously improve how we do what we do. But usually the people who are not in this room, the people who are not in this community, in this bubble, are blissfully unaware of how important that is. So I find this part of my narrative quite a lot with leaders who are from a variety of backgrounds, not in technology, across the whole organization. It's so important to create the incentive to continuously improve how we do what we do. And that word incentive is the key word. My learning is, or my reflection is, ways of working, agility, agile, lean, DevOps, it all comes down to one word, which is incentive. Tell me how I'm incentivized to behave, both implicitly and explicitly, and that might result in a behavior change, and we need to have a behavior change in order for the outcomes to differ. What's the definition of stupidity? Doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. So behavior change has to change. So this word incentive, and there are hidden competing incentives. So it's super important. That word incentive is a really important word. How are people incentivized? And implicitly, what are the hidden competing incentives? What's the selfish gene? So when working with people, personally, I try to find out their selfish gene and their incentives before I've said anything. And I'll spend 90% of a conversation just understanding what's actually driving that person, rather than I've got a solution, here's the solution. So you need to understand, it's worth trying to understand people's incentives. The next one is system. So for the system of work, first of all, shine a light. Dan, I remember many years ago, you did a talk and you spoke about switching the light on in the room and you see the tiger. That little soundbite from Dan stuck with me, stuck in my head. Shine a light. We need to be able to visualize. We need to make things seeable. So there's one organization where we've recently done this, and this organization has had a long period of trying to improve how they do what they do, haven't really cracked it, and then we visualized that, well, look, this is how you do what you do. It's like, oh my God, I didn't realize. This kind of really complicated picture, 28 role-based handoffs, more than 150 steps, and it takes about a year from starting something to getting it into the hands of the customer. And it's like, oh my God, I didn't know. So that takes it away from it being evangelical or a belief system thing to actually, here's the hard data. Those pictures, those are production screenshots, they're deliberately fuzzy. That's shining a light on the system of work. So that the one on the right is an open access dashboard. Anyone can access that. It's got measures along the lines of better, sooner, safer, happier. Those are the categories: quality, time to value, safety, compliance, and happiness. So you can drill in, drill down, team level, team of teams, company level, business unit level. The one on the left is a one-pager for senior leaders. It's stacked ranked. So that's a culture hack. We are using a bit of friendly competition. So we've got the most improved at the top and the least improved at the bottom. That drove a behavior change and that was made transparent. As soon as the people leading the value streams at the bottom realized they were at the bottom and they realized that everyone could see they were at the bottom, they picked up the phone and said, come and help. It's a series of culture hacks and ninja moves. And then organising for outcomes. So in order to thrive over survive, so this is the pivot from role-based silos to multidisciplinary teams. I like to use the term value streams. I've seen this term value streams used a number of times today at SEACOM. And this means we've got multidisciplinary teams. We've got all the skills we need to get the job done. And we have customer proximity, and we see the fruit of our labour. We actually see the value that we're producing, rather than being a cog in a machine, which has been the case for the last 4 technology-led revolutions ever since 1771 and Cromford Mills. So that's one dimension, is value streams. Value streams are nested. 3 things in a value stream: the thing of value, value producers, and value consumers. If you've got those 3 things, you've got a value stream, and they're nested. Team, team of teams, team of team of team of teams. And then on top of that, you apply your outcomes. So this is OKRs, outcomes and key results. I find OKRs to be a good tool to provide a very clear view of value. And very importantly, they need to be nested. My strong recommendation is they are nested. You've got your 3-year at the group level. You might have your 3-year at the business unit level. Then you have your annual OKRs, and then you have your quarterly OKRs. Some organisations, there's an anti-pattern where there's one organisation who've only done their 3 years, but they haven't sliced the elephant. So that's not great. There's another organisation, they've only done the quarter, but they haven't done the strategy bit, which means that's not great, because the teams could be going left and right, not necessarily in line with strategy. So that's a success pattern. On the right-hand side, you've got very clear strategy to execution alignment. You've got like a breadcrumb trail of North Stars. And then on the horizontal, you've got your multidisciplinary teams delivering value from the left to the right. So now you can have high autonomy because you now have high alignment. The OKRs are a shared goal. This word incentive, we are a multidisciplinary team, and we are incentivized to achieve a shared goal together. So it's that's the unlock for the high autonomy, is the fact we have high alignment. And that's within minimal viable guardrails. There are some minimal non-negotiables that everybody has to comply to. I'm just going to pause there, because I see some phones going up. And obviously, limit work in progress. Easy to say, hard to do. Every single organisation, without exception, everyone's doing too much. So you need to create that enabling constraint at multiple levels, not just at the team level, but also at the portfolio level, at the ExCo level as well. So dear ExCo, what are the top 3, 4, 5 things? Not what's your true story. Here's the CEO's top 127 priorities. True story. So the more cars on the road, the slower they go. We need to pull work, not push work. If you pull work through the system of work, you will go at the capacity of the system if you pull it. Like Toyota, like getting that from stacking shelves in a supermarket, pulling it from the back room, pulling it from the warehouse. If you pull it, you will go at the speed of the bottleneck, and you'll identify the bottleneck quite quickly. And stop starting, start finishing. So this came up in another talk as well. No, dear leader, you can't add another thing onto the to-do list, or rather the doing list. Tell us what you want us to stop doing, and then we'll replace it with this one. Not just adding another one on the list. And we need to optimize for team cognitive load and individual cognitive load. We should take this in, we should really think about this in order to thrive over survive. I like this quote: I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have time. It's the same for complexity debt, i.e. technical debt, process debt, culture debt. We don't have time. So we're just going to keep on doing stuff, and it will get slower and slower and slower. And the point we don't have time means we don't have priority. And the point around priority is we don't have an incentive. It means we're not incentivized to take the time to continuously improve, to write a shorter letter, and it takes longer to write a shorter letter. So you as an individual, first of all, look after the goose that lays the golden egg. Another example, another equivalent kind of storyline there is put your own mask on before helping others with their mask in an airplane situation. So you've got to look after yourself. If you're burning out, if you're stressed, you can't help other people, you can't be a good leader. And be master of your own destiny. Personally, I don't like a victim mentality of like, oh, well, I've been made to do this, or I've been told to do this, or I have to do this. Not always. Sometimes that's a self-created narrative. So as much as possible, be master of your own destiny. There's another version of that, which is change your company or change your company. There's a few people in this room I know who've recently or are doing that. And practice self-compassion, like I said. Prioritize sleep. Assuming you don't have small children waking you up in the middle of the night. So to thrive over survive, make sure you're getting enough hours of sleep. What works for me is I plan it. I have, and this is just me, we're all different. Number one, I have about 3 reminders to stop working, because my nature is I will carry on working. I'm a night owl. I'm not an early bird. I will carry on working till 1 o'clock in the morning. That's just me. So I have about 3 reminders to tell me to stop working. And I visualize it, so I track my sleep. If Kate is here anywhere, who works for 𝒊𝒂𝒆𝒐, Kate will say that, Fitbit sleep tracking is amateurish, I would imagine, but it's good enough. I track it, I monitor on my phone how many hours sleep I get a night. It's a good enough behavioral nudge. It's like, ooh, I'm a bit low, I'm going to try harder. The next one is get outside, nature. Green and blue, been proven to relieve stress, to actually see the colours of green and blue. The great thing is I can see loads of green out there behind all of you. And again, I plan it, I build in wellness breaks into my calendar, especially during the pandemic, especially when working from home. I diarise it. I have wellness breaks, and I get out of the house and I walk, even when it's storm Bettina or whatever it is. Even when there's a storm, I get out of the house and I walk, and I still do my morning commute to the train station, even if I'm not getting on a train. I have an incentive, which is there's a coffee van by the station. And recovery, downtime, and social, obviously you need the downtime, so you need to plan it. And this is my guilty pleasure, crap TV. Celebrity Gogglebox, Married at First Sight, My Mum, Your Dad. Has anyone watched My Mum, Your Dad? That's my guilty pleasure, crap TV. I've got like older teenage children, so we can bond. I just watch it for the human psychology. That's the only reason I watch it. The human psychology and bonding with my elderly teenage children. So core beliefs. The first core belief is I control time.
Thank you very much, John.
Time doesn't control me. That was practice.
That's really good. That was very good.
Anyone would think we practiced. Failing to plan is planning to fail. You're sticking to a plan. Planning is indispensable, and plans are useless. Plans change.
No, they don't. Go.
If you don't schedule time for maintenance, your machine will schedule it for you, or your body will schedule it for you. Don't be too busy pulling the cart with square wheels. And improving daily work is as important as daily work. Thank you very much.